Welcome into the Husker247 postgame podcast. I'm Mike Schaefer, joined by Michael Bruntz, as we are here to recap Nebraska's 27-20 loss to UCLA on Saturday. Bruntz, we were driving back after the game, and we were discussing Nebraska's recent history in the month of November. And I think we figured out that they have two, not counting 2020 COVID year, which I don't know that November was particularly kind to Nebraska either in that year. Not counting that year, I think Nebraska has 2 wins in the month of November going back to 2019.
Well, let's see. They beat Iowa in 2022.
Maryland 2019.
2019 in Maryland, yeah.
So I don't know what it is about the month of November. Doesn't matter who you play. Doesn't matter what's at stake. Nebraska just comes up short continually. I don't have a grand plan for what the show is here today. We'll just start with this. I mean, as you kind of go back through this loss for Nebraska today, what stands out to you as you are assessing things right now at 8:17 p.m.?
Yeah, I think I probably go back to what you and I were kind of talking about on the field before the game. I mean, it just around the stadium outside, there really wasn't much energy during warm-ups. It didn't seem like there was much energy. It was a late arriving crowd. It felt to me a little bit like the Maryland game last year. Like that's what I told you. It felt like.
Yeah, right before kickoff, you lean over and you're like, feels a little like Maryland 2023. And I just kind of shot you a look like you don't need to put that out in the ether.
Yeah.
Well, here we are.
Yeah, I wasn't wrong. But I mean, it's, you know, where I start at least, where, this is a game that, Nebraska played really well and inspired football in a loss, moral victory or not, last week, and just looked completely like a different team. And once again, in the first half against a UCLA team that was not very good, but had played well the last time out at Rutgers. And, I think offensively, they had a good game plan. Nebraska defensively early on did not take anything away from UCLA. I mean, there wasn't enough pressure. There wasn't enough. The coverage on the outside was not tight, and Nebraska again looked to kind of similar to the way they did against Indiana, where they were a step slow and not didn't seem to be tackling well. And offensively, you come out after you watch your defense give up a 7-8 minute drive, and you immediately go quickly 3 and out and look pretty poor doing it. I mean, it just set a really bad tone for the entire day. That I think the defense played well in the second half for the most part, but Nebraska offensively, I didn't think at any point during that game looked like a unit that was in danger of going out and really winning that game. Like, and I think that's kind of where you're at in the second bye week, and we can kind of talk backwards from this, but there's a lot of small kind of picture items that are questions coming out of that game, and definitely some big picture questions as well that have kind of been looming in the background that I think are a little bit more at the forefront now about what direction you want to go offensively 9 games into the season, that you can show something in these last 3 games. I don't know what that is.
Yeah. I know that the vibe felt off as soon as we got parked and we're walking into the stadium. I mean, and I don't want anyone to misconstrue this. The fans are no blame for Nebraska's day today. The atmosphere and environment is of no blame for Nebraska's day today. It's just that this is a team that seems like it has to feed off of everything else in terms of the atmosphere and the vibes in order to come out and play inspired football. And you could tell, before kickoff, I tweeted it, I put it on our message board. I mean, there's the usual pushback from people who don't want you to say anything that isn't positive, but it was off. You could tell it was off right away. When they were on the field on the first drive, Nebraska was lucky that they only gave up the 3 points on the field goal on an 8-minute drive. they never really felt particularly close to getting a breakup or getting their hand on a ball on one of those passes or stopping UCLA early in that game. And then, of course, as you said, your offense comes right on the field and picks up sort of where it left off in the Indiana game. Like it jumped all the way back, not from Ohio State, but it picks up where it left off in the Indiana game where you have 3 straight pass plays. They're blitzing. And Dylan Raiola looks like he has no idea what he's doing. He doesn't know where his hot routes are. He doesn't know where the pressure is coming from. He's panicking. And it set a terrible tone to start that game. And then Nebraska battles all the way back. And it's 13-7. And you're getting the ball to start the second half. And I mean, this is a critical key play of the game. I think everybody would agree with that. You get the ball to start the second half, and you put yourself in position where, maybe you're not going to win the game, but you at least have the opportunity to make it a game. And you shouldn't be getting blown out. Very first play. There's nothing wrong with the play call because the guy was wide open down the middle of the field, and Dylan Raiola never saw him. And instead tries to fit a tight pass in between multiple defenders. It gets jumped. They return it for a touchdown. And before you even can think, Nebraska's down 20-7, and their offense has to come back out onto the field and do something. And it's just like their inability today to ever be able to play in front, to ever have 3 things go right in a row. Even late in the game, when they had every opportunity in the world to win this game, to score points, they made playing from the 10-yard line going in to score the most difficult task we have ever seen a football team have to endeavor ever. Like, it was utterly insanity to me that against a UCLA team that's 2-5, Nebraska needed 700 plays roughly to score one time inside the 10-yard line. Like, and I don't get it, Bruntz. I really don't. I don't know that there's a lot of easy answers. I don't know that it's as simple right now. And I think there's a lot of conversations where, you can have the long-term conversation and then you can have the short-term conversation. Long-term, Nebraska has to make some serious changes on their coaching staff and in their offense, and they have to figure out what they are. Short-term, I don't understand how a team full of veterans who came back to go play in a bowl game approach a day like Saturday, one of your last home games of your career, and you come out that flat. I don't understand it. I don't know what motivation is needed. You're 5-3. You have an opportunity to go to a bowl game. You're facing a team in UCLA that, it's not like you should walk in and win the game by 47 points, but you should have an opportunity to make them make mistakes, to make them have to earn everything that they do. And right off the bat, Nebraska's on its heels, and then it's on its heels the entire game, and then it gets closer, and then it's back on its heels again. They make everything look so difficult with this program right now. And I don't know how it gets better. And I'm sitting here and I've got the TV on, and you've got Wisconsin has 3 points at halftime and is losing to Iowa. Washington's up 20-7 against USC. It doesn't matter though. Nebraska can't do anything to these other teams until it fixes itself. And it has a bye week. And I don't even know where it begins to try to fix some of these issues with what it has right now. So I throw all of that back at you to say, Bruntz, how do we fix this?
I'll try to Bob Diaco it back at you. No, I mean, I think your point about kind of the way the fourth quarter unfolded, it's an important one about Nebraska's offense in general. Like, if you go through the play-by-play, they took over with 9:58 left on the clock at their own 47. They scored. Dante Dowdell mercifully plunged into the end zone with 3:57 left in the game. And to your point about kind of where Nebraska was running its plays from, they ran 7 plays from inside UCLA's 9-yard line
on just that drive.
On that drive, and I mean, it's you had the Raiola injury, you had some penalties in there. It just the sense of urgency was never there on that drive. And then, you missed the extra point at the end of it, which was a nice capper. But yeah, it just does not. There's no rhythm in the offense. There's no easy throws in the offense, and it's you go through the drive chart, and there were some drives for Nebraska where things looked okay. I mean, you had the scoring drive in the second quarter. Had the drive in the third quarter as well. That things kind of flowed pretty naturally, and it just looks like you're kind of stuck in mud at other times. I mean, I think I forget when it was that Matt Rule was talking about. I think it might have been Indiana, where he kind of said, nothing is easy offensively for them, and it's not getting any easier. And it feels like you've got a quarterback that's, but as the season has gone along, is playing more like a freshman, and that's a little bit of a concern. And I think big picture, it's a concern that you're kind of staring down the barrel here for the second straight season where you're not getting better in November and you're not playing your best football in November. And that's kind of what you would like to see in a program that's developmental. And it feels like, this year and last year, you've kind of crescendoed in October, and then it's been just try to hang on over the finish line in November, and it just hasn't gotten to that point yet. So that's a big concern. I mean, especially offensively, you are not getting better on that side of the ball when it matters in November. And that's how you end up with the offer that you've had in games to try to get that sixth win.
Well, and the almost maybe damning part of it is you're a veteran team, and you've got a lot of guys who've played a lot of football, and this is what it looks like right now. I mean, I have a lot of long-term concerns and short-term concerns and big picture concerns, and yet at the same time, you have to have the ability to go out and play football and transfer it. Like they're too much of a yo-yo program. Like it's so up and so down, and we're talking about how they have to have vibes to be able to go and play football. Like, it just doesn't make sense. I mean, this is a veteran group. Like I get that Dylan Raiola is not, and I get that you were relying more on Ja'Cory Barney than you are Jamal Banks, and that's probably an issue. But you've got a veteran defense, you've got veteran coaches, at least some of them are. It doesn't make sense that they're this inconsistent. It just doesn't square up with what everything else tells you. And it also just doesn't make sense that their defense is this easy to pass on. I mean, I turned over to you at one point, and teams since the bye week were 48 of 58 passing. Now that's, I don't know, what do they have, like 10 incompletions today or 8 incompletions today? What are we at? Where's the stats at? They had 8 incompletions today, and Will Howard had 3, and Indiana had 6. So Nebraska's forced 17 incompletions in these 3 losses. Quarterbacks are, well over 70% passing completion percentage. Like, I just, for as good as you might play at times, it just feels like this team just can't stay out of its own way, and right now can't really get off the field. I know they just went 1 of 10 for Ohio State. They couldn't get off the field the whole first half against UCLA. And it's not like UCLA was doing any razzle dazzle or anything spectacular. Their quarterback was dropping back and just hitting wide open wide receivers. Or if there was tighter coverage, he was getting the ball in there before Isaac Gifford could close the gap, which is a whole other conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I think you got to give some credit to Garbers. I mean, there was a couple throws.
Yeah, he made some great throws, and I don't mean to take anything away from it, but at the same time, like, when every team that you're facing is completing over 70% of their passes, something of that nature, that's a pretty tough look defensively for a veteran group. A lot of seniors and guys that have played football back there in your secondary.
Yeah, no, that was not a good game for Nebraska's secondary. What, I guess, to kind of look forward, I mean, you've got the bye week, you've got a quarterback that's pretty beat up, and you've got USC, Wisconsin, and Iowa waiting on the other end of it. I mean, what do you see? What do you see Nebraska being able to do in the next 14 days before I'm sitting in the Coliseum, and everybody's playing that song, or the USC band's playing. I don't even know the name of it, but it's in my head already. Every 5 seconds. But what changes can reasonably be made there?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that there's an easy answer with it, in part because we don't know. We think he's fine. He talked after the game, and Dylan Raiola took a big hit late in the game, tried to come back in. So I'm paraphrasing here. I think something tightened up on him again. He went back down. Uh, I'm assuming he's going to be available for you against USC. Again, you have 2 weeks to put together a game plan. Find easy plays and easy throws, something that's convenient for both parties. And when I'm talking easy, it doesn't have to be the screens. We know that they can't really hit those. They worked in the horizontal tight end pass for 0 yards or 1 yard loss today. So, I mean, there's that too. But I think that they have the ability to put together some kind of call sheet where you have plays that you can run. Like there was moments in today's game where that offense looked like it could be effective. There was moments where Dylan Raiola is throwing downfield and he's hitting guys, and Isaiah Nair looks like the wide receiver we thought he was going to be all year, instead of in bits and pieces and sort of, mitigated or gone because your passing attack isn't there. I don't know that there's a simple solution to it. I'm almost now of the mindset where maybe you really do try to establish the run, because if Dylan Raiola is struggling this much to pass and his completion percentage is very opposite of what Nebraska's defense is allowing, maybe you really have to go ball control and try to lean on your defense even more. I just don't think there's an easy solution. And it's not like they're playing particularly good teams. I mean, USC and Wisconsin are heavily, heavily flawed, but it's really hard to see where Nebraska is going to get out of its own way when they play like they did on Saturday.
Yeah. No, I mean, your margin for error is so minuscule if you play the way they did against UCLA. I mean, it's you're going to need the defense to be what you hope it can be and what it has been in spurts this year, and then offensively, I mean, you just got to really dial into what you can do well. I mean, you saw the short routes again to Thomas Fidone. You saw some really nice runs with Ramir Johnson, and then he exits the game, and then you don't see him again. And there's just little things like that at this point you're just that they're head scratching as to what's going on there. And I mean, I think the hope is that you would have had an offense that was at least somewhat more consistent at this point, and it's not. I mean, I think you can get a little bit more from Isaiah Nair. There's probably more in the tank for Ja'Cory Barney, but it's just kind of making all of that go together and flow together is just not. It's not where it needs to be, and I do wonder. I do wonder if Matt Rule at some point takes on a larger role with the offense. I mean, I think you're at that point now too, where I think he's kind of that CEO role as a head coach, but I think you might have to get a little bit more involved over these last 3 games because it's just not working right now.
Yeah, I mean, not to just throw it out on the wall right before we're going to leave, but I mean, do you have to look at putting Glenn Thomas more involved in play calling or in your offense in general? I mean, do you have to move away from Marcus Satterfield? I mean, is it time to do that? I wouldn't have any issue if they did. I don't know that it solves anything. I think some of their issues are going to be still there regardless of who's calling the plays, but you might have a better chance of finding rhythm right now. I mean, they just seem so disjointed, where sometimes it looks really good, sometimes it doesn't. I mean, what did you refer to it as in the press box at one point? That it's the bingo circular thing and they're cranking the wheel. We really like talking about wheels and circular objects on this show for whatever reason. Not sure why that is, but yeah, I mean, you said that the play calls were coming out of the bingo wheel.
It's a little bit of it's a bingo tumbler at times is what it feels like.
Yeah.
I mean,
I guess wheel's the wrong word for it. Tumbler, is that what we want to call it?
Yeah, I think so. I'm sure there's probably a more official bingo name for it, but I'm going with Tumbler.
Yeah. Well, look, with the bye week, you could spend your Saturday playing bingo. That might be more enjoyable than it was today, watching Nebraska play UCLA. But they'll be back in a couple weeks, and the 3 opportunities to get to that 6th win, which all of a sudden just looks significantly more challenging than it has any right to be.
And there's just that little tantalizing bit of watching teams right now that are on Nebraska's schedule play poorly that you're like, just maybe. But I mean, there's a lot of flawed teams left on Nebraska's schedule, but Nebraska is also a flawed team at this point as well.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It's one of those things where you're just thinking in an alternate world, Nebraska handles its business. And on Saturday night, you're watching multiple of its future opponents struggle, talking yourself into a nice little runway for Nebraska going into the next offseason. But that's not the world we live in. We live in the world where Nebraska lost to 27-20 to UCLA, once trailed 27-7 in the third quarter. So that's where we're at. We'll have plenty of coverage of everything at Husker247.com. Plenty of recruiting coverage. You know, we didn't have an opportunity to dive into this. Days like today make it really hard when your mission is to flip recruits and you're on the precipice of doing that maybe with several guys. I don't know what the sell is when you go out and you play like you did on Saturday, but we'll see what Nebraska is able to do on the recruiting trail. We'll have all that coverage on Husker 24/7. Husker Hoops starts on Monday as well. So Brian Christopherson will be covering that. He and I will have our podcast that'll come back this next week as well. So we have all of that Sunday side session tomorrow morning as well. So we got all the content for you. If you want to revel or wallow, whichever, in this UCLA game, we have it. And of course, as we have, we'll continue to cover Nebraska football in every way, shape, or form going forward. For Michael Bruntz, I'm Mike Schaefer. We're Husker 24/7. We'll catch you next time.